Hi, I'm Court Stewart with Strike Visuals, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your Lightbox display. Now these come with instructions on how to do it. There's going to be a printed sheet that's available with the product itself, but also if you lose that, we have those online as PDFs. Those show the layout of how things go, but I'm going to walk you through and make sure you're doing things in the proper order, make sure you don't get confused and damage anything in the setup or takedown process. So now that we're ready to start assembling, you're going to want to take your case and make sure it's laid down. If you open it up while it's standing up, for one thing, you're not going to be able to get the zipper open, but stuff might come crashing out, might get damaged. So make sure your case is laying down. First things first, let's undo the zipper. Get it open. And with these, they keep these things in here pretty tight. That way in transport, things aren't going to get damaged. And we actually also keep the printed fabric inside the case. There's room for it. It is tight, but it definitely does fit, as you'll see. So pop that open. And then what we recommend is pulling everything out and beginning to lay out your pieces using the instruction sheet, so that way you're not trying to figure things out. Pull everything out, get it laid out how it should go, and then go from there. There's Velcro straps that hold all these pieces in as well. Undo those, of course. And then there's 3 of these foam inserts that have the different pieces in them. Easiest to just take these out. And then this last foam insert, the third one that's in here, I don't recommend taking the insert out on that one. Rather, just take your pieces out and start laying them out where they go. Okay, so a simple mistake that we want to make sure and avoid is there are tops and bottoms to these lights. Now the ones that are going to go on bottom actually have these support holes for the vertical supports, as you can see here on these rails. Make sure that you're not interchanging some of these pieces top and bottom, otherwise you're going to have to disassemble and you'll end up wasting some time. But these definitely do go on the bottom, not on the top, because this port right here is for the electrical. But if you take a look at this piece right here, there are none of those holes for the vertical supports. So make sure that these ones are going on top, and that the ones that have these holes for vertical supports, that these ones are going on bottom. Keep those together. The ones on top do not have any of those. So when you're setting up these rails, one thing you need to consider are the channels and the rails that connect them. So we have this piece right here, and there are these rails that slide from one channel piece to the next, and that you use to connect the 2 pieces, and that's what provides the support. So it's fairly simple and easy to do. The one thing you need to consider is making sure that they are lined up properly. So if we have this piece right here, if I take it and actually, here's a similar piece where it's not an end piece, these pieces are going to be in the middle, but if I try and take this piece right here and connect it right here, it's not going to work because I have two of these connecting rails that go into the channels, and they're not able to function how they need to. So it needs to be, make sure that when you're doing it, flip this around so that these rails can go into the channels and that there's not already some there to stop them. As well, another thing to consider is these electrical connections. Right here you have 2 female ends, whereas on this one right here you have a male and a female, the little prongs that need to touch and connect in order to make the electrical connection. All right, so on these vertical pieces, Obviously you'll want to follow the directions and make sure you're putting the right pieces in the corresponding spots, right? But just want to walk you through and make sure it's as clear as possible. All the electrical runs on only one side of the vertical supports. So these ones, as you can see, they have electrical running through them in these spots. And you'll need to make sure, same thing, that you're going male to female on the connectors. But this piece right here that has the transformers on it, these need to be at the bottom, otherwise the power cord will not reach. If you look at one of the other pieces, so this one does not have any of the power supply running through it. As you can see, it doesn't have any of those. So just make sure you're not interchanging those. Okay, so on these vertical supports, these ones have stationary rails that lock into the channels. You're not gonna need to loosen or tighten anything. Basically, you take those, just bring them together, and they stay there. And then gravity and the vertical weight of them will keep those in place. These vertical supports that go in the middle of the inside, those work the same way. These are stationary rails that just slide into the channel. So that's that. And a quick note, if you are setting up the full size light box, like if you don't have a reduced size, if you're maximum size, you're gonna use both of these smaller pieces in there to create your middle piece. So they all just come together like so. Okay, now that you have everything laid out where it should go, you're going to want to go through and connect each length of section. Don't try and connect top to bottom or the sides together yet. Just get everything connected so that it's one long piece on the 4 different pieces, and then also with your vertical supports. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now. But lastly, make sure you're using on the top and bottom pieces with the lights that when you're doing these rails, if you loosen these screws, they become easier to slide. Once you get them where they need to be, make sure you tighten those up. And where they do need to be is, you just want it to be so that it's halfway through, so that you're getting half of that rail on each section. Okay, that's good. Okay, so this is the bottom rail with the lights. We have stabilizing feet that go into these. To attach these, it's super simple. We've got these screws. They just go and tighten in, and there is a little tool that can go in to get it nice and snug if it's a little too rigid on your fingers. So make sure you go and do that on the 3 different feet. And then another thing we need to consider is on the electrical. So we have the electrical on this side. You're going to want to make sure that when you're lining this up, that you have the electrical connecting here and on this side. And the other easy way to tell is you've got this port that the electrical cord is going to go through, and that can only reach so far, and it has to come over here. So just make sure that you've got these 2 lined up and that you don't have the other sides switched around. All right, so once you have all the pieces laid out and all the sections connected, it's time to assemble the whole frame together. So if you have this at the largest size, it gets pretty tall and can be difficult to assemble it. So we actually have a little trick that makes it a little easier. I'm pretty tall, so I can do it without, but even being tall, I prefer to use this trick. It just makes it more simple and quick. Actually, so what you do is on the the vertical supports, or the vertical side channels, you're going to actually disconnect the top piece. So this is our top section, and you actually disconnect this piece from the ones you had and connect it in to the top section. So what this is going to do is it's going to make it so that as we connect all the other pieces and stand it up, when we go to connect this top light section, we're not having to reach nearly as far. This gives us an extra 2.5, 3 feet where we can hold right here and get it set in instead of having to hold up here and try and really get it in those. So make sure you do this on both sides on the top section, and it'll make us final assembly much easier. All right, so now we're ready to add the side pieces. So when we put these on, they are pretty strong, but be careful to try and not, like support both pieces that you're going to be putting up. That way you don't bend anything and it still looks nice and good. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And as I had mentioned before, make sure that your electrical connections are in fact lining up. So as we discussed just previous, there is another third piece that would go right here. So now we're going to take the total top light section and then the piece that goes here as well as right there. We're going to take that, flip it up, and put it on top. So as we're putting on this top piece, you can see that it is bowing in the middle right there. That's okay, it's expected. Just make sure you're not putting too much force on either side. Make sure nobody's going to come and bump this or push it down. We'll have the vertical supports that will take care of this. But as you're going up, just try and go at the same rate so that it doesn't get too wobbly or too bent. As you can see, that'd be much harder if we were trying to do it up here. So definitely make sure you're using that trick to use the secondary piece on top to make it easier to put on. So now we're going to put in the vertical supports, which will flatten that out and make it nice and tight. In order to install these vertical support bars, these are going to go in these metal slots right here, preferably in the middle one, but as you can see, this section right here will interlock. In here goes in like such, and then to get it to lock in, you just rotate it 90 degrees and it's not going to come out. A tip on putting in these vertical support bars is with it bowing down, it's not going to fit how you would want to. So what you want to do is actually start at the top, line up your hole and make sure it's going in the middle. Get it in there and then use the bar to push it up and give yourself enough room to get this bottom piece set down where it needs to go. And as shown before, once they're interlocked where they need to be, just take that, turn it 90 degrees, and you're good to go. And with these, you only want to go 90 degrees. Otherwise, the channels won't be lined up to put in the vertical support bars. To install these horizontal support bars, make sure that these slots are going vertical, like so. Place one in one end and have it pointing down, and then slowly bring it so that it is horizontal and flat. And then once both sides are in, you just take it, same thing, twist it 90 degrees, and that locks it into place, adding more support to your wall. Do that in all the locations. For installing the vertical bars on the outside edges, you'll want to do it on this middle channel right here. So put that in, make sure it lines up with the one on the other side, twist 90 degrees, and you're good to go. Okay, so now that we have the frame completely assembled, it's time to put on the fabric. But before we do that, you want to connect the electrical to power to make sure that everything is hooked up how it's supposed to be, make sure the lights turn on. Otherwise, if you go and plug it in after the fabric's on, you're just going to have to take off the fabric and find out where things are missing. So now we're ready to install the electrical cord into the system. You can't have it running through the front or the back. It needs to come up through this porthole. So lift up the frame just a couple inches off the ground. Send the piece through that's the red connector not this end, of course. Then you're just going to take this and plug it in to this, and it is channeled so that you can't do it the wrong way. Find it and it'll just snap right in. It should be good to go. In order to attach the fabric, these have a silicone bead that is sewn onto the fabric itself. And what you do in order to attach it is you'll take that silicone bead and you will turn it so that it'll fit into the channel of the aluminum and just basically slide and push it in. And when you get to a corner, just grab the piece and push it in and start finishing using your finger to slide down the edge. So in putting on the fabric, in order to do that, especially where this is a larger piece of fabric, you're going to have to fight it just a little bit, fighting gravity, because it can get not heavy, but it's constantly being pulled down. What we recommend doing is starting in one corner with the fabric, and then you'll want to do it with two people. It's easier, it can be done with one, but basically starting in the corner and working away from the corner until you end up at the opposite corner. Also, if it's taller, like our setup is, you're going to want a chair or a stool or a small ladder. Even being tall, I can reach, but it is difficult. And like I said, you're going to be having to constantly pulling that fabric up. So if you can find something to stand on, going to be much easier. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So once you get it going, you can actually just slide your thumb or finger down and just push in as you move, making it go a lot quicker. Now that we have the fabric fully attached on the front, we're going to need to repeat the process for the back. Even if your back fabric is just white and not custom printed, you are definitely still going to want to do this. Otherwise, you lose a lot of the light out of the back of it. Even if it is fairly up against the wall, you're going to have a much greater light effect coming through the front by having both pieces of fabric on. So we'll go ahead and do that now. Now that you have the back fabric attached, you're ready to plug it in, turn on the lights, and ready to exhibit. Once you're ready to take your wall down, basically just reverse all the steps. Make sure you fold the fabric, make sure you put all the pieces away where they go in the appropriate slots. So that way when you go to set up next time, it's going to look good, nothing's going to get damaged, and it's going to fit how it should. All right, when you're putting this away, you're going to want to make sure that you're putting the pieces in the appropriate spots. As you can see in here, some of these are different lengths, some have different cutouts and different profiles. Those are made to fit the different pieces, right? So we've got the one with the transformer, there's a big slot for it. You're going to want to make sure that goes in the appropriate spot. Same thing with the lights. Some of these will fit the lights, others will not. So make sure that you're putting them in the right spots. And same thing if it has the rails in them for the bottom and top pieces, make sure that those are just going in the correct places so that you're not damaging anything and that everything is supported how it's supposed to be. If ever you do get confused putting these away, we've laser engraved into the foam which pieces go where. So S3, S4, we have those parts right here, S1, S2, S1, S2. That way you're not having to guess more than you need to.